All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Start off tonight with our forum where Scott's going to talk about our, well, I guess the title says a lot of it. You can't take it with you. So he's going to give a good talk about our estate sales program and how that all works. So I'm looking forward to seeing and understanding a little bit more about this myself. So Scott, if you want to go ahead and take it away, it's all you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Andrew. I think I'm unmuted and sharing my screen. Hopefully you can see it now.
Yep, looks good.
Yep.
Okay.
You look good.
Guys, my name is Scott Johnston. I'm KD4EBL. Been a ham since 1991 and proud member of Vienna Wireless. Start off a little bit, a ham passes away. He arrives at St. Peter's pearly gates, and St. Peter's there talking to him. And he said, "Did you take care of your family?" And the ham pauses and says, "I think I left them pretty well off. I have my government pension, and the house has been paid off, and they can liquidate my ham shack." St. Peter says, "Sounds like you did well. They will be okay. And they will sell the items below what you told them you paid for them." Okay. Laughter, laughter, laughter. Silent key is a term of respect for a deceased amateur radio operator. The term originated with telegraph operators and continues with early wireless and amateur radio operators today. The term SK is used in telegraphy to indicate the end of transmission. Today, the term is commonly used within the wireless community as a sign of respect and condolence, regardless of whether the deceased was actually a licensed amateur radio operator. We, BWS, has a silent key committee who helps with disposal of equipment. So what I'm going to talk about today, I thank you all for attending here. We're going to talk a little bit about what happens to your shack if something happens to you. I have a couple of things to consider. I'm going to go over a few case studies based on things that have happened in the last couple of years that I've been working on this, what BWS does, and then some closing thoughts. Silent key states and liquidation, estate planning shouldn't be all about your wealth and who gets your golf clubs, your toolbox. The lucky person who inherits your classic Camaro or your Harley Davidson 1940 knucklehead. The amateur radio station, regardless of size, has a financial investment to it that should not be denied to your family, friends, or institutions you support. Keeping good records of your equipment and the value and condition of every major item will expedite the disposal of your radio equipment while also decreasing the strain on your survivors. It's an unpleasant issue, yet part of life, so you should make it as easy as your survivors as possible. While this is a sensitive subject to most hands, it's a fact of life. As the saying goes, nobody gets out alive. This PowerPoint is meant to be a resource that amateur radio operators can use to establish an inventory of their radio equipment. In turn, the inventory can be used in making up a plan for the disposal of radio gear, including antennas, to be used by the ham survivors. If you ever managed or even helped the silent key survivors by selling off or donating at times the silent keys radio estate, you know how much work it can be. And this can be cut down to a minimum by both having an inventory and a game plan in place with the absolute need for it. So what do we do? Something happened, you might have gotten a little buzz there, and you don't know when that's going to happen. You don't know if this happens quickly or gradually, that you have time to do things. And you also don't know, unfortunately, with some people, if Alzheimer's comes in and you simply forget how to use your equipment. So what does your estate do? It could be your spouse, it could be your kids, it could be a relative, it could be someone you appointed. Do you sell it? Do you donate it? Does it go in the trash? Do you give it to friends? Often, is it sitting there collecting dust, or is it starting to rot? And I'll show you some things later on what I mean by that. Now, I have some tips here as you go through. The whole idea is to have a plan, have a will, have a document handy that's telling how to advise ARL of your passing. We'll get into that a little bit later. And there's a link to the FCC site if you want to cancel your license or reassign your call sign. You compile and maintain the documentation of your equipment, its cost, resale value. You have a representative who will act as a buffer between your survivors and those interested in your radio equipment. Should you have one or more items you wish to donate to an individual club or other organization, you should have a separate page in your documentation stating who gets what. And probably also in there, you should really talk about if you borrowed equipment and making sure it gets back to the right person. QST Magazine has always included some excellent materials in the past. You can do a little search on that. As you look at this, we have in the past been the recipient where some people have just said, take it, it's a donation to the club. And other people have said, please sell it to us. And in some cases, the clubs actually want to use it. But it really gets back to some of the record cleaning and to have an idea and a plan. So one of the things that we'll have here, and I'll be putting this up on the website, is just some simple spreadsheets where you can put in your radios, your mobile, maybe some evaluations, if it works or not, maybe some receipts that you have in here. These ideas are just a place you can put all this. It might be a file. I have a binder for my wife, and in it says contact VWS and make sure that they come over and get the donations. This really is helpful, especially with the valuation. It doesn't have to be exact because you'll have to update it every few years. But certainly there's a difference between having a Heath kit that has not been restored yet and having a full line of Collins equipment in pristine condition. And the values between those two is something you want to just put down there. I talked a little bit about QST. There's a whole section on the ARL website of how to report a silent key. They do need a copy of the obituary notice or death certificate, but they will help you out with that. And they'll list it, of course, not only in QST, but help you stop your license. And if you may know, once the silent key, the license, they put a cap of 2 years on it once they know before someone can reuse that. Once again, this is all can go in a binder or into a file. Got a couple of cases now, and we'll start with the good. Good was one that we recently had as part of the auction. Ham's son came to us with a list. The equipment was all inventoried. The suggested prices were actually added. The son was informed what we will do to the shack. Most of the equipment was still in use, so we knew that it still worked. The excess was pre-disposed of. And what I mean by that is a lot of the junk had already been taken out and either sold or given away previous to that person having passed away. This is probably was the easiest that we've ever had. It was a pleasure to work with. That would be a great way if everybody was able to do that. But as we all know, nobody knows when you're going to go away. Certainly things happen in the meantime. So the second case study I have is another case that we have, and this ham was actually well loved by a lot of people, which I bring up because often when we sell the estate, people want some memories of that ham. All the equipment, though, was in one room. All the wires and cables were labeled. All the documentation was out. Wife was informed what to do with the shack and what to do with it. Most of the equipment was still in use, so we knew that it was still usable and worked. We did have to go up and take some antennas down and do a little bit of cleanup on some of the items. And with this, 20% went to club. And we got a wonderful thank you note, even though we haven't sold everything yet, but we got a wonderful thank you note from the spouse saying how proud she was that our club was able to help with this and how much her husband loved the club. This slide here is not representative of everything that was in that estate, but it's showing you how clean and everything that was there. Okay, our third case study, which often happens for us, is we get donations all the time. And it could be that somebody found some radios in their father's basement. They've had a few items they just dropped off, or it's something they want to help the club. And these type of donations happen all the time. They, when we sell them, or in some cases even the club uses them, but mostly when we sell them, those help the club quite a bit. The money goes right into the treasury. If you follow our budget at all, without us having Winterfest this year, the auction we did really helped us out and supplemented some of the money that we usually make from that. This, I'm not sure if we should put this in the silent key consignment, but this happens all the time. And, keep in mind that this is a thing that everybody can do now, or they can wait. I did show this one radio here, which is a fairly new radio, of how dirty it was when we picked it up. And this happens, is one of the things that we do is clean up stuff. And so just I put this as case study 3. Now we get, and here's another slide of a couple of items that somebody has recently donated. A couple of ARC, I think they're ARC 6s. They're out of old airplanes, a couple of VF, a couple of old scanners. And we get this stuff all the time, and we try to clean it up. And we kind of do a quick inventory of whether, we think this can sell and how much we can get for it. Or in some cases, if it's stuff that we really don't think we sell, we'll bring it to a club night and give it away, or find a home for it. Here's another case where sometimes we get donations of very old equipment. In this case, this Kenwood still worked, and we passed it on to someone who collects these. We have gotten a few things in the past, though, that have been real collector's items, and sometimes we'll try to sell those at like Winterfest or at an auction, or we're even entertaining the idea of putting a few things out on eBay that really don't have a huge appeal to members of our club or in this area. Now we're gonna get the case, we talked about the good and the bad, and we've kind of talked about that. Let's get to the ugly. We've had 2 major, and we're in the midst of one right now, where the person passed away or could no longer use the radios, and they literally had an entire basement full of radios. Some were high-end, some weren't. Every QST going back to 1936. Tons and tons of old wire and old parts that really probably were past their prime. This is the type of thing that, the club definitely helps out with, but it takes a lot of time. And in fact, at the end, I'll see if there's anybody. We'll probably need a few people to help donate some time to this. There's a lot of junk to sort through. We did one that we're still sorting through boxes and boxes of stuff, trying to see if there's any treasures in there. But often it's, we pick up a radio and we can't find the matching adapters for it, or we can't find the documentation and it's somewhere else in the house. When we get these major ones, we have to make a decision. Do we try to sell now? Do we wait till Winterfest, which we know isn't really happening right now? And then do we want to incur the storage costs? Because if we put it out in somewhere, we go through where possible, we clean these items up, we test them, and often we determine whether something's worth it or not, to if it's broken, and whether we should get it fixed or not. And I'll kind of go through a couple of pictures here of a recent one that I'm helping out with. This person passed away 5 years ago. As you can see, we have closets, and they had 4 major rooms in their basement, switch after switch after switch, a rat's nest of cables and routers, and most of the antennas, as we get to, have really gone past their prime. So we kind of have to go through and sort this stuff. A lot of old wires. I don't know if Ron's on, but he'll tell you if it's old coax, get rid of it. Don't waste your time with it. Here's their antenna. This was fascinating to me. It's a 75 or 100-foot tower, and if you can see they had something growing all the way up to the very top of the tower. And in this case, they said, just give the tower away. We're going to put something out on the listserv. The tower is going to be very hard to take down. We're actually going to look and see if we have some professional people to help with that. If we can't find someone that donated wants to go out there. And in this case, they had a tower. They had one of those old 6-foot satellite dishes and a few other things. But it's hard to tell from these pictures, but these vines went all the way up to the very top, and obviously this hadn't been used in a long time. You get into these places, and as you can see here, we have old Commodore 64s, old tube TVs, which really there isn't a lot of call for these days, and some vintage gear that's all sitting there. And we kind of go through this antennas. You notice there's some fishing rods here. We end up getting often donations that are non-ham related, whether they be tools or TVs or old computers. And so we look at these sort of things and try to figure out what we want to do with them, or what I should say, what the estate wants to do with them. But this went on and on. There were 3 other rooms like this, were just full of stuff. This was their shack. As you can see, there's a couple of amps here, scanners, and some of the sons started taking some of the stuff apart, so we weren't even sure where some of the radios were anymore. Old QSL cards. And we're not in the cleaning business, so what we do is we come in and help, and we stabilize everything. We make sure things are unplugged, that no one's going to get zapped. And as we go through everything, we keep safety in mind, as well as we take pictures and try to determine a value and how we're going to dispose of it. In this case, another in the backyard, very high-end antennas, moon bounce antennas. Another tower that was this is a different house than the one with the other tower. Tons of wires, and we help with some of this stuff. We're not, we don't often be able to take everything apart, but we do the best we can. And what we're also looking for is often with antennas, especially these older ones, is we tend to say, is there a ham in the club or in the area that would just like to try to rehab these things, get them work, and they get a good deal on them, often for free. Okay, so what does VWS do with this? As people, we get these calls often through the website, or some of the older club members, and say, what do we do here? We have an antenna committee, and often that antenna committee is putting up antennas for hams, but we also take them down. I got a call a couple weeks ago to a house out in Fairfax, and literally the antennas hadn't been used in years, but we found a couple of good things and a couple of things that really weren't worth keeping. Literally there was a butternut antenna, which is an HF vertical. It was so buried in the dirt horizontally that we can't even get it out. So we may have to bring a shovel back and see what we can do. We look at this stuff. We have a committee for the silent keys, consignment committee that kind of works usually with Winterfest, where we would put all this stuff on Winterfest, but obviously we didn't have it last year. We won't have it this year. So we look at auctions. We look at other ways we're doing for sale. And in some cases, does the club want to use it? We have put a couple of radios in for club use that can be lent out. We thought that was a good idea and a good way to help out some new hams. One estate asked us in particular to say, find some new hams that have been hams less than a year and just give them the equipment. It was a couple of HTs and a few other things. So that's the type of thing we do. This can be really rewarding, and I can tell you everybody's been very happy with what we've done so far. In particular, the Silent Key Consignment Group does. We're a focal point for the club when these inquiries come in. We do a lot of consulting. We firstly will go out, make sure things are safe, take a quick inventory. Now we're doing all the inventories on site because it most of the stuff ended up in my garage, and my garage became a wreck. So we're trying to streamline that. We inventory the items. We try to take a picture of it now because we know that if we do virtual sales, people want to see pictures. We take down antennas, once again being safe, and then we help dispose of everything. Whether what we often talk to with the estate is, what do you want to do? And our standard is sometimes it's 100% donation, which is great. And often if they want to sell it, what we ask them to do is the items are higher value, usually over $50. We'll sell it at 20, the club usually takes 20% on that. And can they donate the smaller stuff? Because often it's not worth inventorying all the little tiny parts in there. And just about everybody's been pretty good about that. To set expectations, it's a balance between we want to get top dollar for these items, but we also quickly want to find a new home for the treasures. And so we try to give, I don't want to say super deals, we don't want to give it away, but in some cases, the estate just wants to get something for it and keep going. Some of the things we don't do, though, is we don't really climb towers. We don't endanger ourselves. We had a case where literally there was a 220 line that was very easy to touch that we had to work on. And right now we have 4 estates that we're working on. One is huge, one is medium, and the other two are kind of small. So as we go on, I always make this appeal that we do need some help. We have an antenna committee that is always looking for help. We need help inventory and pricing the silent key estates. Often we will take the items. Let's say it's a antenna analyzer. We'll look out on eBay for items that are sold, and as well as our own knowledge, and put a fair price on it. We usually put a minimum and then a maximum on the price of, giving us a range of what we think it can go for. When we have the next auction, we definitely want to do help. We learned a lot. On the last auction, we want to see if we can automate it a little bit so we can get the prices out there quicker. And then hopefully we'll have a Winterfest in 2022 or a junk in your trunk or something else. I'd like to have some sort of sale this fall, even though the fall is rapidly going through us. And it may be just a straight sale where we put things at a good price. Finally, talk a little bit about the Final 73. I found this out on the internet. I thought it was pretty good. As we age, we've got great members in our club, and as they pass away, there is a process called How to Perform a Final 73. It's awkward to say something about the person on the air, so they do a final thing where they put net control out there. They say, key up, say the following slowly and clearly, in honor of our good friend John Doe, who is now a silent key. John Doe, and their call sign, John Doe, no contact, John Doe, silent key, may you rest in peace, 73. So I probably went a little quicker than I should have, but I kind of open up the floor to some questions now. Let me stop sharing the screen. I'm not sure, Andrew, how we do questions here, but I guess you can raise your hand or throw something in the chat room.
Yeah, so if somebody wants to throw a chat up, or at this point, if anybody's got a question, just feel free to speak up. I've got a few thoughts. I have some stuff that may have in my inventory currently, and I'm wondering, it's stuff that it still works. It's just older equipment, so I'm looking to get rid of it. What would be my options?
So Andrew, that's a good question. Usually the option we always want is lots of stuff there for Winterfest. And if we don't have Winterfest this year, I was going to go to the board and say maybe we either put a for sale listserv out there that the club members can use. We looked at the ham community where you could post pictures and prices. There's nothing, and it's been done in the past. If you've got a list of, let's say you have 10 items and you have prices on them, you can send it out to the listserv and just ask everybody to contact you directly. That's happened in the past. And we may do some of that in the future. I have a few special items that we may look at doing that, and then some antennas out there. I'm hoping that in the spring, things lighten up a little bit, that we can maybe do something in a parking lot one day where we can still social distance if we need to still do that. And kind of, I think the Culpeper Club, the junk in your trunk, they found a big parking lot. You open your trunk, it's almost like a mini tailgate fest. And certainly that might be a fun thing to do too. But your junk is someone else's treasure, Andrew.
Well, sounds good. That'd be fun if we could do a junk in the trunk for sure.
And certainly as a club, and the board knows that there's a pent up demand for this right now because we didn't have our sale and people have things they do want to sell. And I just encourage everybody to, when you, especially in the wintertime, you got a little extra time, clean up your shack a little bit. If you've got some stuff that maybe someone else might use, there's no reason why you can't just put something on the listserv and say, come get it for free, or I got a few things I want to sell. And if it gets too much, we'll split off the listserv. There's another thing.
So Scott, you mentioned a few times that we have a bunch of stuff. Can you put that into some other terms? How much stuff do we have?
Well, there's two ways of looking at it. My garage has got probably, we're renting a 10 by 10 that will probably fill up. And I have to go back and talk to one of the estates, but literally it's a huge amount, and I'm not sure what we're doing. The 10 by 10 would probably fit most of what people have approached us on right now. But the thing is, before I put it out there, I certainly want to have it inventoried, make sure if it's working or not, and have a tag on it so we can go figure out where it is if we want to go sell it. This one shack though is got, I mean, literally I think he's got 10 amplifiers. He's probably got 20 to 30 rigs. It's huge. And if we do something like that, we want to try to turn that over so we don't have to take everything out, move it, sell it, move it again, and distribute it. And that we know that's a big issue there. But when people have asked me, do we have an extra HT or all, we have been, privately selling stuff to club members at a reasonable price when the need arises. And I need to get a better list out there. I have a new job, so that's been taking a lot of time, but I'll put a list out there, especially of test equipment and things like that. That if people say need an antennalizer, we've got 5 and we can sell it to the club at a good price.
Cool, thank you.
And those are items often we have items that are donated. So the club owns them pretty much. And then we have consignment items where we are working on behalf of the estate, where we will get a percentage and they'll get most of it. So the donated items, we have full use, so we can do anything with them right now. So there is a difference between the two.
That, you said you're going to have a list maybe available for membership to see what we have.
Yeah, well, I'll put that together. My hope was to get it out in like mid-November, so right in time for the holidays.
Okay.
And I will be working on that, especially the donated items, so we could sell those. I got a lot of pressure to keep things to Winterfest, but unfortunately, what's going to happen is we'll get other inventories in between now and whenever we have our next Winterfest. So.
All right. Anybody have any last questions for Scott?
We're going to update the website with those inventory sheets, and also my presentation with the speaker notes are in there. That will go out on the website too. Thank you all for your attention. It's not a great topic, I understand, but we all got to deal with it at some point.
Well, thank you for all your efforts, and thank you for talking to the club too, and I get everybody else aware that this stuff goes on, because you can buy stuff, you can find stuff that you might want, new hams especially, have a good resource within the club before you go to ham radio outlet and drop a couple $100 on something. You might find something much better deal within the club.